All right, now I know some of you guys are curious about Ableton, and the new Ableton 12.4 was a really dope update. If you guys want to get inspired, look at Nick Mira's stream about Ableton. It's actually very good. It will make you want to use the DAW. So a lot of people are unsure if they should switch over to Ableton or even use it. So in this video, we're basically going to compare FL Studio versus Ableton and give you a producer switching guide so that you guys understand what to expect when you switch between the two. All right, so firstly, let's just go piece by piece. In FL Studio, you have 5 main buttons that we worry about. The playlist button, which is where we add stuff and like arrange stuff. We have the channel rack, or excuse me, we have the piano roll. This is where we draw in notes. One of FL Studio's best features, in my opinion. We have the channel rack, again, one of FL Studio's best features, in my opinion. This is where we draw out our drums and different sequences. And then we have the mixer, which could be better, not gonna lie, could be better in FL Studio. But once you kind of get the gist of it, it's pretty simple. And then you have the browser. Okay, the browser is where we search our samples and do all types of stuff. Now, I will say FL Studio's browser is useful. Okay, so I won't say it's not good. Now, in Ableton, let's see if we can find those same things. For the longest time, I was at a Sam Ash store. I opened up Ableton. I was like, how do you create a pattern? Like, I couldn't figure it out. So firstly, to unlock some of those features, we have to actually create a region. So let's highlight this and right click. And let's go to where it says, where is it at? Insert empty MIDI clip. Okay, so now we can double click in here or click in here and then click up here and drag this, and now you'll see the piano roll. So stuff like that is just a difference in workflow in general. I think personally, let me just give you guys the unfiltered truth. Ableton, in my opinion, is extremely good at audio manipulation. FL Studio is extremely good at drum sequencing, okay, and piano roll stuff. Whereas Ableton, if you tried to click in the piano roll in here, you're gonna drive yourself insane. Okay, if you're coming from FL Studio, that's just my personal observation. It's not the same as FL Studio, okay? So something I just highly recommend you guys, if you're getting into Ableton, you know, buy a MIDI controller. That will solve so many headaches, okay, in Ableton. Just trust me. I've been teaching this stuff for a long time. I've never taught anybody how to draw melodies in Ableton's piano roll for a reason. It's just too not what FL is, okay? And it's not that it's poor or bad, it's just not FL Studio. All right, so in Ableton, you have the browser automatically shown here on the left side. We have the playlist automatically shown here. The mixer is this little vertical button here, which I think it's a little more intuitive because stuff is auto-routed in Ableton, whereas in FL Studio, the mixer, you basically have to send stuff to the mixer for it to get routed. So it's like you have to spend all this time routing stuff in FL Studio, whereas in Ableton, stuff is routed by default when you load up sounds. And I'll show you guys the workflow in a little bit. So I think that saves a lot of time, okay? And what else did we show? The channel rack, they don't have a channel rack per se. So for example, if I wanted to create drums, I have to go to the piano roll. Now there are devices, but you know, those devices aren't really useful in my opinion when it comes to the same workflow as FL because it limits you. So you're gonna have to get used to drawing in the actual piano roll of Ableton. And this is gonna really slow down a lot of producers in FL, because we do our drums quickly like this. If we have to go through all these settings just to get a basic thing going, it kills the flow. All right, so let's go into a real workflow. So let's say I'm making a beat in FL Studio. I might load up an instrument. So let's go to the channel rack right here. And let's replace this with something like Toxic Biohazard. This is a stock plugin. For example, let's click here. Let's go to default. Click on default. Now, another question you guys may be asking is which version of FL should you get? So here's the official list of features. I personally think that because FL has such a huge community to help you guys, I feel like FL Studio is a great starting point. Ableton's for more if you're into EDM or sound design. You really have to know what you're doing in Ableton to really get the most out of it. And I don't think there's a huge education community around Ableton, personally speaking, online. All right, so here's image line list. I personally think the producer edition is the best one. You guys can buy whatever other edition you want, but at least start at the producer edition. Okay, I can save you guys a lot of time. You get stem separation. You can record your audio, blah, 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 right? Okay, if you like certain plugins that aren't on this list, you can always go and buy them separately in their store. So you could cherry pick plugins, okay? I'm not gonna go through this entire list. That would be ridiculous. But as you guys can see, you would have to buy Toxic Biohazard separately. So it really depends on the style of music you guys are creating. Some styles, you know, lean towards stock plugins, some don't. Okay, so if you're doing underground beats, yeah, you might want stock plugins. But if you're making like organic hip hop beats, you're not gonna want stock plugins. They don't sound organic. Okay, so there's a long explanation behind that. Let's program a sound here. And let's up operator 2. Spread the panning. Okay, so now we have a sound. So here, let's turn this. All right, so let me show you guys the flow in FL Studio. I'm gonna turn the metronome on, and I just made a sound. Of course, when I hit record, I play the wrong note. Okay. That last chord, I hit some of the wrong notes. But in FL Studio, okay, let me show you guys how quick it would be to fix stuff up. So let's say I click the wrong note. So I double click in here, I hit Shift Q to quantize the starting point. And one of these last notes, I could see where I played the wrong note. So let me map out the chord. I meant to play. Okay, so I can hold the sustain pedal, and now I can visually see, okay, I played C sharp, I played F, I played A, I should be playing B. The C was an accidental note, and then E. So that's what I meant to play. So I fixed that very quickly. They even have a script in here. In the tools, you have to download this from the forums. It's called Remove Overlaps. We're going to hit accept. So basically in FL Studio, if notes overlap even a little bit, they may mute the next note. So that saves a lot of time there. And now I just fixed it. Now let's say I want to quickly fix the velocity. I could hit Alt X and turn down the multiplier to make it softer. Or I can make it louder. Okay, there, I could turn this into an arpeggio, Alt A. Now there's a couple little like glitchy notes, so I'm gonna go in and just delete those. So I'm hitting Control Shift to delete these little small slice notes. But just like that, I have an arpeggiator. That sounds really, really, really unique and musical. All right, now in Ableton to do this, I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but it's just so fast in FL Studio to make these changes. All right, now in FL Studio, you would have to hit Control L to send it to the mixer. And then if you want to add some effects, I could go here to the drop down and start adding, you know, any effect. So I'm just showing you guys like the workflow of what we would actually do. All right, so that would be the workflow. And then we could print this. We could do a billion things from here. I'm not gonna make you guys sit through it, the whole tutorial. Now in Ableton, to do the same thing, firstly, we gotta find a sound. So finding a sound, personally, I'm sure there's a faster way, but it is a little tedious because they don't have that same, here's a plugin list, pick a plugin. Yeah, you can go to your plugins and just search, but it's not a typical plugin list. You basically have to search for stuff. That first initial thing might bother a lot of people going over to Ableton, because now what you're gonna have to do is there's a separate folder for plugins that we're used to using versus their instruments. So now instruments is separate from plugins, which is separate from sounds. So it's like, what is what? Now, what I do like is that they've added a new search feature. So let's say you're looking for a very specific instrument, you can search by the type. That is helpful. However, it's still like what, you know, I don't know. It just seems too separate to have instruments separate from plugins, separate from the sounds. It's like put all the sound generating stuff in one folder so we could just have a list of sound generating stuff and choose from whatever we want. So let me make sure we're not playing in FL Studio. Let me mute the audio here on this track. Now let's go over to Ableton. And now we have this E-piano. Now we'll say Ableton stock sounds are a little bit better than FL in terms of organic sounds. Now we have to figure out what BPM were we at. I think we were at 140. So let's just go to 140. Now I wish I could just double click here and type in 140. So you're like, okay, how do I change the BPM? Do I left click and drag? You can click and then type. Not intuitive. Like, I don't know whose decision it is to like make that not double clickable so you could just type it in. I have no idea whose decision that was. I'm not here to critique Ableton. I'm just saying basic stuff like that might bother you guys. It's basic, but it's like, why is that not a thing? All right, so now we got to turn on the metronome, these two little white balls here, and then now we're going to record. All right, so where'd our track go. Here's the electric track. So let's record. Let's go back. And we have to hit the record button right here. Now, I'll show you guys how to add effects. Let's first just record a chord progression. All right, so now we have that. Now, hopefully it recorded my sustain pedal movement. So we're going to set a loop just using this little thing up here. Now, like I said, Ableton is built, in my opinion, for people with a MIDI controller. Again, if you're trying to type in notes like we do in FL, you're going to drive yourself insane. But even when you have a MIDI controller and you go back to clicking in notes, you're like, why would I ever click in notes? So clicking in notes is used by a lot of producers, but I will say it tends to be frustrating once you really get your hands on a MIDI controller. Let's put this on loop mode and let's go back. So now let's say you want to add effects in Ableton. What we can do is, what's different is you think you have to send it to some mixer channel, but by default it already has a mixer channel. Okay, so that's the difference in FL Studio. Is like we don't have to do all this routing from the beginning. And I don't know what happened to my sustain pedal here. So that would be an, so I can go to automation and try to figure out where the sustain pedal went. I don't have time to be trying to figure out the automation in Ableton. However, let's go to electric. Let's see if we can find that sustain pedal. I don't know if they call it damper. Let me see here, guys. All right, so this is super unintuitive in my opinion. So for example, traditional automation would have a simple sustain pedal like Logic would. You click automation, you go to the, you pick your instrument, you go to the drop down. You would assume sustain is here. Okay, it's not here. So this is what I'm saying. Like just basic human instinct is just different in these DAWs. So we have to go inside the MIDI clip, go to where it says envelopes right here. And then we have to switch this over to scroll down until you see sustain. Why is this buried down here? Like what the freak? I don't know. It's like common sense stuff. I think a lot of these DAW companies are just losing common sense. I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you guys, but that's just seems like common sense. To put it in a more obvious area. All right, so to add effects, for example, we have to click on the sound. Like for example, we can either double click here to pull the sound back up, and there's this little window down here. I don't know if you guys can see, but my head's in the way. But in the bottom right, you'll see the actual sound itself. Okay, this will open up the drop effects area. Then we can go to the audio effects. I do like Ableton's audio effects, so the chorus is really good. Let's add that. Let's add a little warmth in there. So now we have a more 80s piano. Let's even add a little auto pan. So I think Ableton is built for like sound designers and people who really love audio manipulation. I'll show you guys a little tip in a second here. Let's switch this curvature to more of a triangle. All right, now we're gonna right click here and we want to convert this to audio. So here's the cool thing about Ableton is how they deal with audio. So let me bounce this track to a new track so that we have the MIDI and then we have the audio. So what's cool about Ableton is we can click here, hit Command E or Control E and just create little chops. Now let's say I'm just gonna cut this hitting Command E and I could double click in here and it's seen as a separate file. Whereas FL Studio, if I did the same thing, let me go to FL Studio. And if I record some keys in, it considers everything the same file. So you have to do all these steps to separate stuff. So let me just show you guys. All right, so in FL Studio, okay, you're the same way we chopped, we have to go to the slice tool, make a chop, slice tool, make a chop. Cool. Now, if I change anything about this, it changes everything else. So watch this. This is one frustration people have with FL. So if I double click in here, you may think you're working only on that specific chop, but you're working on the entire recording. So if I reverse this, for example, it reverses everything. So what we have to do is a whole nother step where we convert this to its own file. We click here, go to make unique as a sample, and we have to save it. Then we do our change. So it's like all these little steps just to do something basic. Okay, that's, you know, that can be a headache in FL Studio. Whereas Ableton, for example, let me make sure I turn this keyboard off so you guys don't hear that. Whereas in Ableton, you guys saw I made a slice here. It's seen as its own thing. Okay, so if I hit reverse, it's not reversing the entirety of the whole recording. Okay, and the cool thing about Ableton is we can also add these like features in here with different, we could slice different warp modes. Okay, we could slice by beat mode and then do it by the transient, or we could do it by time interval. Basically, we can create forward and backward looping. And let me see if I can even slice it fast enough. I don't know how to actually trigger this thing, but when it triggers, it will basically do a backward loop. I think it might need to be a smaller chop. Maybe the chop's too long. Again, I don't know everything about Ableton. I'm not going to sit here like I'm an expert. But you can do warping. Okay, I learned that from Triza and Sound Oracle, for example. So now we're doing stuff that we just couldn't do in FL Studio. All right, and then the cool thing about Ableton is you can even extract a groove. So let me combine these. I think it's Command J if I'm not mistaken. So we just combine all those audio just like that, and we can even extract the groove. So let's say you guys have some kind of percussive loop. Let me see if I can find one. Again, the browser is a little bit of a headache. I'm not gonna lie to you guys in Ableton versus FL Studio. It's just, I don't know what it is about this that just drives me insane. But I do like their new like category system where you can kind of search by category in some cases. So let's load up a drum by count, a drum loop by count. All right, let's drag this in as an audio. And it should time stretch for us. So no matter, that's why I don't think he puts BPMs on his files, is because Ableton automatically adds a BPM to it. So it figures out the best BPM and it does time stretching for you. If I did the same exact thing in FL Studio, here's the issue with FL. I drag this in and now I have to figure out what BPM it is, and then I have to time stretch it. So I have to do two steps that Ableton does automatically. That's why people call Ableton a cheat code. So I would have to double click here, go to stretch mode. That's actually one step. Then I have to figure out how long this sample is. So let's guess and just say it's 8 bars. So you can see the piano's kind of offbeat. All right, now if we go to Ableton and do the same, similar piano, I'll say, we don't even have to time stretch or do anything. We just hit Command D to duplicate. And I'll show you guys a little tip. You can right click here and you can extract what's called grooves. So I could take the timing of the drums and then I can actually go back to the piano and quantize it to the groove of the drum. So even if it's audio or MIDI. So that's something that Ableton, like I said, has a superior system about that, and it makes it extremely simple. Logic Pro also has a system like this, but it's not as like intuitive, I'll say. I don't even know if you can extract grooves in Logic Pro, but I know you can time warp with their flex mode. So let's go here to the audio. You have to hit Control A and right click, I think, right? And insert warp markers. It's been a while since I've done this in Ableton, y'all, so this is not a tutorial, but we're gonna go to groove, and then we're gonna pick the groove of the sample. I think it was called Anyone. Let me make sure that's the proper name. Yeah, Anyone Drums Simple. So now we gotta figure out how to commit this groove. And I wanna say if you click this I button, it'll tell you more stuff. All right, so commit the groove is this little tiny arrow here. Okay, so I don't know if it makes markers or what. All right, so let's quantize. I think I had to quantize for it to actually work. There we go. So now we'll lock into the groove of the drum. If I did that step properly, I probably did something wrong. But the concept is there. Okay, again, it's not a tutorial I'm making here. Oh, so maybe this only works when we have warp markers in here. This little beat mode, I'm not sure. I think this is doing what I think it's doing. So we get a more tight groove. Anytime you hear somebody with super tight grooves, you're like, how the heck did they get this swingy groove? It's because in Ableton, you can lock your music to the groove of the drum, which just pulls everything together in a magical way. And in FL, there's so many steps to do this. There is something called, what is it, new time, but it's just not good, guys. I'm not gonna sit here and cap to you guys. Like, for example, if you open this up and go to time warp sample, you would think that it's like time warp, but it opens up another screen and you're like, okay, what are these vertical lines? What does that even mean? And then you got to figure out what it's even doing. You can't even tell what it's doing. Like, did it quantize? Did it not quantize? Like, what just happened? So it's, I don't know, this just requires too much thought, okay, in my opinion. But it can work in some cases if you are in dire straits. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. So I just quantized to the quarter beat, not necessarily the groove of this drum. Let me see if it allows you to import grooves, because that would change a lot, but I doubt it. I say it says load groove pattern. So there'd be so many steps to create a groove pattern around this audio. It would just take up way too much time. You can do groove patterns technically, but it requires you going into, let me just show you guys how long of a process that would be. So we're gonna have to open up the audio and slice, for example. Then we have to slice, perfectly by the transients. So this is kind of a rough slice. And then we have to extract this MIDI and save it as a score file. So now we have to dump this into a score log over here. Boom, dump score log. Then we have to go into the piano roll. Then we have to go up here and save this as a file, as a score. Okay, and let's just save this to the desktop. And now I have to go back into time warp. So let's do this again. Let me open up the audio. And look how many steps this is taking, y'all. And you have to remember all these steps. We can load, and we should be able to open another. Okay, let's go to desktop, test. And now this is the groove. It took all that time just to get to this. And I'm not even sure it's even doing anything. So that's what I mean, is like FL isn't built for audio manipulation the way Ableton is. It's just not. And I don't want to, again, sell you guys a fantasy. That's the reality. I've been teaching this stuff for 14 years. All right, so what else is there to talk about Ableton versus FL? I do think Ableton has gotten better with their mixing, drums and stuff. Now, I could sit here and make an entire beat. I'm just going to be quick about this. We're going to go to the mixer, and we're going to find our master channel, and then we're going to load up a couple plugins. So the secret sauce in FL Studio is to run everything through like what's called the Fruity soft clipper. So again, we don't have time to be sitting here making a crazy beat, but let's just load up beat mix. We have to right click, we have to hit control, left click and highlight, and then right click down here, go to route to this track only, and then load up what's called the Fruity soft clipper. So this is kind of like the sauce people use in FL. We're gonna turn threshold to the right. You can load up another soft clipper just to keep it simple. Then we're gonna load the first soft clipper and make sure we turn the post levels up. Still a little boomy, so I'm gonna go ahead and EQ out some of the lows real quick. So don't worry about copying these steps. This is not a tutorial, I'm just showing you guys. So this is what most people would do. Just slam everything through a Fruity soft clipper. Okay, now let's go to Ableton. We're gonna find our main or our master. Okay, then we need some effects. So I think their effect that I was using was called, man, it's been a minute since I used this. I think it was Saturator. Yeah, Saturator. And this is kind of like their Fruity soft clipper. And you can switch to soft clip mode. you can also like take the lows out of your mix. Like the drums are like smearing somehow. I think that's because I have the settings on. Let me turn these off. Alright, so now let's go back to the main tab. So again, we're not trying to make the craziest beat in the world. I'm just showing you guys. Now, where did our, see how you could easily be like, where did the thing go? Because now we're on clip mode, or whatever this is called. So now I have to click over here to see the audio effects. That small little change, you know, for somebody who's not used to Ableton, that can be like super confusing. You're like, where did my effects go? All right, let's add an EQ in here. Let's cut down on the lows. I don't know if it lets you set the frequency here. Let's not use that EQ. Let's use a different EQ. Alright, so now I'm just gonna eyeball this. Try to use the same curve I did in FL. This has a ton of low energy in it, so I'm trying to. For some reason, that sounds very reverby. Like I said, there's reverb in the sample. But anyhow, so you were running through a soft clipper. There's different styles of clipping and different styles of saturation, I meant to say, in clipping. Okay, so it's the color mode that makes it sound kind of weird. And then we might run it through a compressor. So I will say Ableton stock plugins sound really good in terms of mixing. We can even do parallel mixing. I wonder if we can do mid-side. I'm not sure if we can do mid-side very easily, but that would be cool. It's like, what else is there to add? Maybe a limiter? It's a pretty wide, smooth mix. Now again, it's a different mix than this. Because we didn't add as many things in there. So just, you're gonna get a different mix just naturally based off the sound. So if I had to judge these two, here's the synopsis. I know this video is kind of long, but if I had to judge these two, if you guys plan on doing clicking melodies, FL Studio. If you plan on doing trap drums, FL Studio. If you plan on doing underground beats, FL Studio 1,000 times a day. If you like to record guitar and vocals and just instrumentation with your MIDI controller, Ableton. If you like to sound design, Ableton. If you like to mix, Ableton. I do think you can get good mixing if you're in the underground in FL Studio, but if you're not in the underground scene, Ableton Live has a more like standard mixing approach. Okay, so that's my synopsis. It really just depends on what you guys are trying to be, especially at the cost these things are nowadays. You really want to make sure you're choosing a DAW that you can invest in and build upon and not get frustrated. Personally, I think there's a lot of training, especially at busyworksbeats.com/FL Studio. I will guide you through the beginning of FL Studio all the way to making your first beats. So there's training there. Whereas Ableton, I don't know a go-to Ableton site or like a YouTube page where I could just learn Ableton and not get bored. So, and learn the workflows that we would use in hip hop. So that is kind of why I'm leaning more towards FL for a majority of people, but Ableton is definitely quality. So I don't know how else to explain it, guys. I'm trying to be as honest as possible. That's how I feel about it. Thank you guys for watching. It's a game for busyworksbeats.com. Peace out, guys.